Before we dive into
You
this
have
story,
fought well,
hit the like button and
but
subscribe,
this
because what you're about to
is where
see
your
will send
journey
shivers down your
ends.
spine. The air inside the warehouse was thick, almost suffocating. The lights hanging from the ceiling cast harsh shadows over the makeshift ring, where a thin man in torn clothes, his face covered in blood, stood upright by sheer force of will. No one in the crowd believed he'd survive another round. The once deafening roar of bets had faded into an eerie silence, as if everyone was simply waiting for the exact moment his body would hit the floor. The smell of sweat, blood, and dust mingled in the air, turning every breath into a battle. His opponent, towering, imposing, a cruel smile carved into his lips, circled slowly, certain victory already in his grasp. But there was something in the beggar's eyes that no one could quite explain. A silent flame that said, "This fight isn't over." The man standing across from him wasn't just a fighter, he was a legend in the underworld. Known by many names but feared by all, his record held dozens of victories, many ending in scenes too brutal to remember. His eyes weren't searching for victory, they were hunting for total humiliation. In the corner of the crowd, some whispered old stories about the time he was thrown out of official tournaments for excessive brutality, how his rise in underground rings was paved with threats, blood, and dirty money. Every scar on his body was a warning. Facing this man was playing with your life. As he paced the ring, sizing up the beggar with a cold gaze, his smile revealed something darker. This wasn't about winning, it was about destroying. And the crowd knew. When he decided to finish someone, nothing was left but silence and fear. The metallic clang of the bell echoed through the warehouse, and the tension became almost tangible. The crowd pressed closer to the ring, shoving for a better view. Bookmakers waved wads of cash, shouting wagers and taunting one another, while the heavy scent of alcohol and cigarette smoke clung to the air. The beggar, still gasping for breath and with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth, slowly raised his head. Each step toward the center of the ring seemed to weigh a ton, but his eyes never left his opponent. Across from him, the fighter cracked his fist together, a gesture that announced the execution was about to begin. Cheers and boos collided into a chaotic symphony. Some laughed, convinced the fight would be over in seconds. Others stayed quiet, watching with an uneasy curiosity, as if sensing that tonight might end very differently than everyone expected. The referee barely finished calling the round when the opponent charged like an unleashed beast. His feet pounded the canvas, every move calculated to crush the man in front of him. The first punch came like lightning, a straight to the face that sent the beggar stumbling back nearly into the ropes. Before he could recover, another blow smashed into his midsection, knocking the air from his lungs and folding his body. The crowd roared at the violence, some shouting encouragement to the aggressor, others staring with bloodthirsty eyes. A left hook snapped the beggar's chin upward, spraying red droplets into the air. Each strike echoed through the warehouse with a dull, bone-deep thud. The opponent, merciless, gave no room to breathe. 3, 4, 5 strikes in quick succession, determined to end it right there. But even with trembling legs and blurry vision, the beggar refused to fall. He was still standing, and that was enough to make his enemy uneasy. Blood dripped from his chin, forming a small crimson pool beneath his feet. Each drop seemed to feed his opponent's arrogance, who now circled like a predator playing with its prey. "That's all you've got?" the fighter sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. The beggar lifted his eyes slowly. There was no defeat there, only a strange, quiet calm, as if he somehow knew the right moment hadn't come yet. The crowd was divided, some shouting for the referee to stop it, others urging the stronger fighter to finish the job. But the beggar, swollen-faced and barely holding himself upright, stepped forward, wiping the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. It was a silent declaration. It's not over. The opponent expected fear, but what he saw was something entirely different, a fierce, almost feral spark, like a cornered animal ready to strike. For a brief instant, that look silenced the crowd. Everyone felt it. Something was about to change. The beggar took a deep breath, straightened his stance and rolled his shoulders. Every muscle in his body seemed ready to respond, no matter how battered he was. The opponent stepped forward, but this time the beggar didn't flinch. The atmosphere shifted. That inner flame was now igniting the air, wrapping everyone in electric tension. Moments ago, they saw a man on the brink of defeat. Now, they wondered if they were about to witness a miracle. The opponent knew that flame in his eyes wouldn't die on its own, so he pushed harder, trying to break him down. "You're just trash the world forgot," he spat, letting the words hang like poison. "I'll end you in front of everyone." The crowd erupted with jeers and whistles, sensing the storm about to break. The beggar stood still, locking eyes as if burning each insult into memory, ready to return them with interest. His fist clenched, jaw set, his breathing slowed into a steady rhythm. The taunts kept coming, attacks on his appearance, his life, even his dignity. But instead of breaking him, each word seemed to fuel the fire inside, anger mixed with pain, transforming into raw fuel. This wasn't just survival anymore, it was about honor. While the opponent circled, searching for an opening, the beggar's mind drifted. The ring lights blurred, replaced by flashes of a harsher past, cold nights on the street, the bitter taste of hunger, fights over scraps of bread. Faces appeared, some who helped, some who tried to break him further. Each scar on his body was a chapter in that story. But scattered among the pain were memories of unlikely victories. The day he fought off 3 men to protect a child, the time he refused dirty money despite starvation, the distant moment when someone told him he had the heart of a warrior. Back in the present, the blood still flowed. But now it meant something else. It wasn't defeat. It was a reminder. I've survived worse. And this would be no different. He knew he couldn't win with brute strength. The opponent was bigger, faster, and far more experienced, but the beggar had something you couldn't teach, the resilience of someone who had already survived the impossible. Every hit he took now had purpose. He let his body roll with the impact, absorbing it to stay on his feet. His eyes stayed locked, studying patterns, spotting openings. While they thought he was about to collapse, he was calculating. Time was his ally. The longer the fight dragged, the more his opponent's precision would fade. The sweat pouring down his rival's forehead was the first crack. The beggar knew all he needed was one chance, one perfect shot. At the start, almost everyone was against him. The bets were unanimous. He wouldn't last the first round, but now things were changing. Every time he stood back up after a heavy blow, every time he wiped the blood and stared his opponent down, a new murmur rippled through the crowd. Some who mocked him fell silent. Others who bet against him leaned forward, trying to understand where this strength came from. A small group in the corner began chanting his name, splitting the ring between jeers and cheers. The opponent noticed too. His movements weren't as confident now, and each glance at the crowd revealed fewer cheers and more eyes on the beggar. The fight, once decided, now carried something far more dangerous than pain: hope. The fighter lunged, convinced one final blow would end it. But as his fist came for the beggar's face, something shifted. With a quick, precise move, the beggar tilted his head, dodging by inches, and countered with a clean right to the jaw. The impact rocked him. He stumbled back 2 steps, dazed, unable to process how this battered man still had fight left. The crowd erupted, not in mockery, but in shock and exhilaration. Suddenly, everyone understood. The fight was still alive. The beggar didn't waste time. Seizing the opening, he landed 2 more rapid strikes, forcing the opponent to retreat. The sneer was gone, replaced by a mix of rage and disbelief. For the first time that night, he looked vulnerable. Fury drove the fighter into a flurry of wild, heavy swings, but his breathing was labored, his once precise moves now sloppy. The beggar, bloodied but clear-headed, waited. Each dodge was timed to perfection, each step a silent trap. And then the moment came. As the fighter overextended on a powerful cross, his flank opened. The beggar pivoted and delivered a sharp, exact blow to the exposed target. The sound cracked through the warehouse like thunder. The opponent staggered, eyes losing focus before his body crumpled to the floor. Silence fell instantly. Everyone knew they had just witnessed something historic. The referee began the count. 1, 2, 3. Tension thickened with every second. By 8, it was clear. He wasn't getting up. The official raised the beggar's arm. Victory declared. For a moment the room stayed still, as if they needed to confirm what they'd just seen. Then the cheers exploded. Applause, stomps, shouts. Even those who bet against him couldn't contain their awe at the impossible turnaround. The beggar raised his fists, not as a man seeking glory, but as someone who knew the price of every second of that fight. This was more than a ring victory. It was proof that even when the world counts you out, you can still turn the tables. As the adrenaline faded, the pain set in. Every muscle burned, every wound throbbed. But none of it mattered. He stood tall, looking at his fallen opponent with a mix of respect and compassion. No arrogance, just the awareness that life could have gone very differently in that ring. The crowd still roared, but he didn't crave their applause. Winning meant more than beating an enemy. It meant proving to himself he still had worth, still had the right to fight for his dignity. When the lights dimmed and the crowd drifted away, the ring stood as a silent witness to a night no one would forget. The floor still bore the marks of blood, sweat and dust, scars from a battle that would echo in every retelling. The beggar stepped down slowly, each move carrying exhaustion and the weight of victory. No trophy, no cash in his hands, but something far more valuable, the respect of those who once saw him as nothing. That night's fight wasn't just about who would win. It was about proving that dignity and courage can't be measured by appearance or status. As he disappeared into the dark streets, his name began to spread like a whispered legend. Some would remember him as the unlikely winner of an impossible fight. Others as the man who proved that even while bleeding, you can stand until the very last second. And so his legacy would be forever etched into that ring.